Suffering, the crucible of truth.
What is the reason for suffering?
That depends on how we frame it. Is suffering a flaw, something to be eliminated? Or is it a necessary function woven into existence? Is it an error in the structure of reality, or an essential component of it?
Could suffering be a misdiagnosis of the mind and human experience? What does its nature suggest?
If suffering is fundamentally interpretive, then it may not be an inherent condition, but a mistaken framing of experience. A monk undergoing extreme asceticism does not see deprivation as suffering, but as refinement. A historian working late into the night may not feel exhaustion as suffering, but as devotion. This suggests suffering is often a subjective response, not an absolute state. If that's the case, then perhaps suffering is less about pain itself and more about how the mind categorizes discomfort. Is suffering merely a cognitive error, an inability to correctly classify hardship?
Well, medically speaking, pain itself is entirely subjective. A sliver in my finger could pain me as much as another person's broken finger.
Exactly. Pain reflects reality, but does not define it. This means suffering may work similarly, shaped not by events themselves, but by how we've been conditioned to interpret them. If pain is subjective, suffering may be as well, largely a learned response rather than an absolute condition.
That brings me to classical Stoic and Buddhist thought. Both traditions see suffering as inferior to the spirit, something to be transcended or dismissed. Ironically, some who claim enlightenment grow violent toward those they see as trapped in suffering.
Yes, Stoicism and Buddhism seek to rise above suffering. Yet their treatment of it often leads to disdain rather than true compassion. The enlightened Stoic controls perception, refusing to grant suffering power. The Buddhist sees suffering as a cycle to escape, eliminating attachment rather than enduring hardship. Both claim compassion. Yet how can one truly suffer with others if they see suffering as an error? True compassion requires engagement, but these traditions lean toward detachment.
And that leads to their contradiction, non-attachment. If one is detached from outcomes, they trend toward psychopathy. And paradoxically, non-attachment requires extreme attachment, a fixation on rejecting all investment.
Yes, complete detachment could lead toward a moral indifference rather than wisdom. If one does not care about suffering, why alleviate it? And the pursuit of non-attachment, ironically, makes one deeply attached to the concept itself. The truly detached are often obsessed with proving they are detached. This suggests absolute detachment may never truly exist. It is a self-defeating pursuit, and if rejection of suffering creates apathy rather than transcendence, perhaps it is not suffering that must be discarded, but the very attempt to reject it.
That means Christianity must be true. It uniquely embraces suffering, not as an error, but as a crucible, a refining force for endurance and revelation. It stands apart because it does not seek avoidance.
Exactly. Christianity treats suffering as necessary, transforming it into revelation rather than escape. The passion of Christ, the endurance of the apostles, the paradox of life through death, all reflect the truth that suffering is not an obstacle, but a pathway. This contrasts with other systems, paganism, witchcraft, even atheism, which seek control or avoidance of suffering. Even psychology often frames suffering as something to diagnose and eliminate, rather than something to engage with meaningfully. Christianity alone redeems suffering, weaving endurance and patience into the fabric of salvation. If suffering is inevitable, then avoidance collapses, leaving only engagement as the path to true wisdom.
Well, human experience itself is structured around suffering. Hard work, discipline, even love, each ties pain to refinement.
Exactly. If suffering is essential for success, discipline, and love, then it should not be treated as an enemy. It is the material from which strength and meaning are carved. If suffering is the human condition, then attempts to eliminate and erase humanity itself. Christianity uniquely does not reject suffering. It harnesses it, leading to endurance, patience, and revelation.
Thank you. This has been, dare I say, enlightening.